Okay, chapter 127. This chapter touches upon many of the primary problems that occupy a person's thoughts, things like building a home, earning a living, marriage, raising good children. And David Malach offers his advice in how to exceed in these important endeavors. As one of the Shir Hamalises, it's a pretty short one, as they mostly are. The general message that David Malach shares with us is that human effort is futile if not blessed with divine approval and assistance. And David Melech's personal life has a vivid illustration of this point. He spent a lifetime gathering money and precious metals for the construction of the Beis Hamikdash, yet his dream was not fulfilled. The reason given was because he had shed blood, therefore he forfeited his divine approval for the project. So even though it was the right thing for him to do to protect the Jewish people with those wars, he was not allowed to build a Beis Hamikdash. So all of his efforts, all of his good intent did not lead to success in building the Beis Hamikdash. Only his son, Shlomo, was able to take over that sacred project with all the material that his father had painstakingly prepared and build the Beis Hamikdash. But David Melech's life taught him this lesson that when you put your faith in Hashem, and if you merit the divine favor, your efforts can succeed. But this faith has to take the place of doubt, anxiety, fear, because only with that faith that Hashem will bring success to your project will you actually be able to merit the peace of mind and the success of the project. There's going to be different verses in this chapter that focus on this idea just in different ways, but in general that is going to be the theme. So we're going to talk in verse 1 about building houses, verse 3 about having children, and verse 4 about war. It's all about recognizing that your best efforts aren't going to be successful if not for Hashem making them be successful. So the first verse, Shir Hamalis, a song of ascent, Lishlomo. This is the first of the Shir Hamalis that we see dedicated to someone else, dedicated to Shlomo. And the reason being, as we mentioned, that first of all, that was one of the lessons that David HaMelech learned. As he says, Im Hashem lo yivnei bayis, shav amulu voinav bay. If Hashem doesn't build a house, then those who toil to build it work in vain. David Melech worked and worked and worked to build the Beis Hamikdash, but Hashem didn't want him to build it, so he wasn't able to build the Beis Hamikdash. Only Shlomo HaMelech was able to build it. And in the verse ends, Im Hashem lo yishma'ir, if God doesn't protect the city, shav shakad shomer, then the watchman keeps watch over it in vain. And that was a very painful lesson that we were reminded of on October 7th. It doesn't matter, you can have the most advanced army and the most advanced logistics and weapons and equipment and technology. But if Hashem isn't protecting the city or protecting the country, people could just walk right through that wall, and unfortunately, tragedy can take place. So that was an important reminder as well. But there's another message here specifically to Shlomo, because David Melech saw that Shlomo was the one who was going to build the Beis Hamikdash. He saw that through prophecy, but he also saw a mistake that Shlomo made. Our sages tell us is that he married an Egyptian princess on the evening before he actually built the Beis Hamikdash. And our sages explain he had very holy intent. That's why he married her right at the exact same time, basically, that he was going to be dedicating the Beis Hamikdash, because he wanted it to be a almost like a demonstration, a merger of celebrations to demonstrate the universal influence of the Beis Hamikdash. And he felt that it would be a sacred place for Jews and Gentiles alike. And he felt that marrying the Egyptian princess and the other many wives that he married was supposed to prove that the sanctity of the temple could transform even all of these lands, even Egypt, the most impure, profane, depraved of all lands. His motives were pure. According to the Rambam and others, he converted the woman that he married before he married them. But at the end of the day, it's considered a mistake. He failed to seek the guidance of our sages. And although he probably thought that his wives were sincerely committed to Judaism, the truth is that they converted for ulterior motives, and ultimately they did influence Shlomo's heart away from God. And our sages teach us that that at the very moment when Shlomo HaMelech was constructing the temple, he actually laid the seeds for its future destruction on that very day. The Talmud teaches that at the moment he married the daughter of Paro, again, which was the day before the actual inauguration of the temple, that's when Hashem started laying the foundations of the Roman Empire. It says that there was like the beginning of the island, which eventually turned into Italy, and Rome was started to form in the sea. And they eventually would destroy the second Beis Hamikdash and bring about the current exile. So there was already within this concept of Shlomo HaMelech wanted to build the Beis Hamikdash, but he built it in a way that didn't fully align with Hashem's desire. And within the very building of it, he already set up the destruction of it. Because if Hashem doesn't want you to build something, or if you're not building it in line with Hashem's will, then it's not going to last. It's also a blueprint. In general, this verse can be interpreted for a home as well, in a marriage. If Hashem doesn't support a marriage and bless it with success, then you can have the best intent, the best people, the best techniques and classes, but you have to daven for shalom bayis, for peace in the home as well, or else none of your itzas, none of your plans and solutions and techniques and tricks are going to be able to guarantee that peace. Same applies for raising children as well. Peace in the home regarding shalom bayis. Even the most conscientious parental guidance is ineffective unless it's accompanied by divine aid. Shlomo, David HaMelech had many children. Unfortunately, he had many issues with a lot of them. There was obviously like Avshalom and Adoniyahu who rebelled against him, tried to kill him. Even King Shlomo made some mistakes over here as well, and paved the way for his own downfall. So again, you can read the books, you can do the research, you can do your best, but unless you have divine assistance, you can't be guaranteed anything. So you have to, and therefore what? Therefore you have to have emunah, you have to have faith, and you have to daven. You have to daven to Hashem for success in your business, in your marriage, raising children, all of those things. There's also in this idea of if Hashem doesn't guard a city, no one will guard it. So the Gemara Yerushalmi quotes this pasuk because it says that there was a time when Rebbe sent a lot of some Talmidei Chachamim around from city to city to establish Jewish day schools, basically. And their technique was they would go to the city and they'd say, "Where are your watchmen that protect your city?" And they would show them the armed guards who protected the city. And they said, they're not protecting your city, they're destroying your city. Very provocative, right? And the people would say, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, these people, yes, they're guarding the city, but their very presence shows that you lack emunah and faith that Hashem is protecting your city. And if you don't have faith that Hashem is protecting your city, and they're the ones that are making you not rely on Hashem, they're actually a threat to your city." And they said, "Well, who should guard our city? What should we do?" They said, "Well, if you have teachers of Torah, they're the ones that actually offer the real protection to your city." Our sages actually teach that the Torah scholars are exempt from a tax. If a city has a tax to pay for protection for the city, Torah scholars are exempt because they don't need that physical protection. They have the protection of Torah. And if Hashem doesn't protect the city, then all the physical protection in the world isn't really going to be worth anything. Pasuk Beis, Shav lechem mashkimei kum. In vain do you rise early, those who get up early. Ma'acharei shavas, and those who stay up late. Ochle lechem hatzavim, you eat the bread of affliction, bread of sorrow. Kenitali yedid of shena, God gives to those to his dear ones, even while they're asleep. On a simple level, this pasuk refers to man's incessant toil, squandered energy. The pressures of life force us to overtax our energies, working day and night without rest. And anxiety strips away all their peace and pleasure and flavor of life. But they have this frantic activity, which is in vain. Because again, why are they getting up early? Why are they going to sleep late? Why are they eating their bread but in sorrow and pain and not even enjoying it? Because they don't trust in Hashem. They think that they have to do this. They have to do this, or else they're simply not going to have what they need or have what they want. But the pasuk says, all of what you're trying to accomplish, God can give that to those who he loves while they're asleep. You're getting up early, going to sleep late, you're toiling and working hard. It's not necessary. God can give it to you while you're asleep without any effort at all. So yes, of course, we have a responsibility for hishtadlus. We do have to do some effort. We're not able to just sit back and go to sleep and assume, sometimes yes, but most of us can't just assume that God will just rain down riches upon us. So we do have to put in the effort. But you don't have to overexert yourself to the point that you're eating bread of sorrow and you're in pain because of everything that you're doing in your life. You're allowed to have time to learn, time to spend with your family, because Hashem can give you everything. So you do your hishtadlus, do your reasonable effort, and then Hashem provides the rest. There's also some other interpretations here. The Radak says this refers to those who seek the holy city of Yerushalayim. So like Mashkimei Kum are those who attacked it first, the Romans. Machrei Shavas are those who came later on in history, the Arabs. And David Melech says, it doesn't matter. Those who try attack earlier, attack later, it doesn't matter. God looks upon all their futile struggle to take away his holy city. And at the end, he says he's giving it to his beloved one, which is Mashiach, who is Shena, who's sleeping right now, enjoying restful sleep, doesn't require any effort, and Hashem will just, in the future, just give it to him. So Hashem is, so to speak, mocking those who work so hard in the past and then less in the past, but also more recently, they're always trying to take away the city from the Jewish people. But in the end, Hashem's just going to give it back to us. There's also another message here that some explain that this refers to David HaMelech's sons who rose up against him. So the Mashkimei Kum, those who got up early, would be Avshalom. He was the first to challenge King David. Machrei Shabbos, those who got up late, who stay up late, that would be Adoniyahu, who rebelled at the end of King David's life. But both of them met eventually with their death. They were not able to wrest control from King David because the Jewish monarchy is granted exclusively to one branch of the house of King David, and that was the house of David's son Shlomo and his descendants, and no one else could be successful. So Shav Lachem, there's no point. God will give it to his beloved. He'll give it to Shlomo HaMelech in his sleep. There's no one else that can take it away from him. Pasuk Gimel, Hine nachlas Hashem banim sachar pri betan. The inheritance of God and the reward is the fruit of the womb. Again, just developing this theme further, that nothing you can do will bring you success without divine assistance. One of the places that this is most obvious is bearing children. We know that we can do, people try and try and try, and they can do everything they can, but if God doesn't give someone the gift of conception, and then even if they do conceive, the gift of pregnancy, healthy pregnancy and healthy birth, like it's so beyond our control. It's one of the few places that we see that something that you think is relatively basic, run of the mill, happens all the time. But then when you actually think about it, or if unfortunately you have the experience or are aware of experiences that people go through it, that it's so not obvious and it's so out of our control. And even with modern technology and medical intervention and IVF and all these things, where they developed incredible, almost miraculous ways to assist with conception and pregnancy and birth. But it's so often you see, even with all these advancements, it's just totally not in our control. And it's totally up to Hashem. Does it take? Does it not take? Does it last? Does it not last? Is it successful? Is it viable? It's just all up to Hashem. And the Talmud says that although God granted control of many natural phenomena to the angels, he reserved for himself the key of the womb, meaning fertility. And God does not allow a woman to conceive until the precise moment when he has deemed it appropriate. And the same applies not just for conception, pregnancy, and birth, but also for child rearing as well. Even after a healthy baby is born, to God's constant vigilance and assistance are essential for parents to be able to be mechanech a child, to help them grow and develop healthily and spiritually, physically, mentally. And without divine assistance, there's no guarantees. And you have parents put in the best effort and the most wonderful parents with the most best education and the biggest focus on their children, and it doesn't always work out the way they thought it was going to work out. You have to daven. It's all from Hashem. And then the pasuk Dal says, "Kichitzim biyad gibor ken b'neha nu'urim." Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are sons born to a man in his youth. David HaMelech, kind of moving on from the idea of children specifically, he focuses on what his experience was, is that children, it's an easier time basically. The way the commentators explain this verse is that there's definitely some benefits in having children younger, specifically in the ability to be mechanech them. When parents are younger, they're more vigorous, they're more alert, they have more patience, and they're able to have an easier time being mechanech their children, directing them in the path that they want to set out for them. And David HaMelech seems to almost be regretting, according to some of the commentators, that he didn't have Shlomo, his most precious son, until later on in years. David HaMelech lived to the age of 70, and the Mefarshim say that Shlomo was born when he was 58. So he had his other children younger, like Avshalom and Adoniyahu, and they were very trusted assistants in David HaMelech's affairs. They really helped him. Shlomo HaMelech was really quite young when he passed away, but he's almost lamenting that he wished he would have had Shlomo earlier, because this pasuk refers to B'nei HaNu'urim, which is those who are born to a man or a parent in their youth. And the children who are born in the youth, they are like kechitzim biyad gibor. They're like arrows in the hand of a mighty warrior, meaning they're sharpened. Their personality becomes like a sharpened arrow. And the way it's explained is a weapon of allegiance to God to wage the ideological battles that they're going to face. The last verse, praiseworthy is the man that fills his quiver with them, and he will not be embarrassed when they speak with the enemies in the gate. So having compared the sons and children to arrows, continuing the imagery, he compares the home to the quiver. So fill the home with children. Also, it could be referring to filling the study halls with students, and that's sharp students, perceptive students. There's also the word ashba, the Marasha, one of the famous commentators of the Gemara points out, ashba, which means quiver, can also mean garbage dump. And he writes like a scathing rebuke to the people of his time who didn't really like having young children or bachrim come to their yeshivas or their homes because they made too big of a mess. So he said, "What do you mean?" The pasuk says you should fill ashpasai. You should fill your garbage dump with them, meaning that you should be okay with them coming, even if they are going to make a mess. Let them fill up your house like a garbage dump. Like let the young students of Torah come and make a mess and study and just be what kids and young men should be like, because it's a beautiful zchus to be able to have to clean up after people who are living a Jewish life and studying Torah. In the last part of this verse, Ki dabros even mashar, you will not be embarrassed when they speak to the enemies in the gates. The Ibn Ezra says it refers to the time when Nasan Hanavi, the prophet Nasan, told David HaMelech that God would not allow him to build the temple, and David HaMelech was concerned that people would use this to refute King David's claim to the monarchy, because you're supposed to be the king, but you're not building the temple. Why not? But when he was told that Shlomo HaMelech, his son, was going to build the temple, he rejoiced, and he knew that his enemies would be put to shame. And specifically, they were put to shame by the gates, because our sages tell us that when Shlomo HaMelech built and dedicated the temple, the gates miraculously refused to open, and they ignored all of Shlomo's pleas, all of his supplications, until he prayed that they opened in the merit of the piousness of King David. And immediately they swung open. And at that moment, the sages tell us that the faces of the enemies of King David turned black from disgrace, because they recognized that Hashem loved David HaMelech, and this huge miracle had happened in his merit. And that's this last verse. Lo yivoshu, I will not be embarrassed, says David HaMelech, because there will be a proof, the verification of my righteousness. The enemies will speak in the gates, meaning they'll speak and recognize the truth when they see the miracle of the gates that they only open in my merit. Okay, Yashar Koyach. Thank you for coming. I'm glad we were able to have a shir.